At InDigital, we know the public safety professionals hold themselves to a high standard. In fact, standard doesn't do it justice. In over 25 years working alongside you, carrying millions of calls over our IP networks, your dedication has inspired us. That's why our ESI Net goes beyond industry standards, not only i3 compliant, but designed to adapt to future development for a network you can count on when it matters most. Learn more at indigital.net.
If Within the Trenches has ever taught you something, open your eyes to what it is like to be a 911 dispatcher, or has inspired you to become one, then help support us and join our Patreon. Get exclusive bonus content, one-of-a-kind swag, discounts on merchandise, ad-free early access to new episodes, and much more. To join, please visit patreon.com/WTT podcast. And if you're an industry partner, we have something for you as well. And now, for the show.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned. Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and this is going to be Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them. This episode is sponsored by InDigital, a leader next-gen core services, and a big shout-out to patrons of the podcast as well as Facebook subscribers. As always, thank you so very much for everything. I wouldn't be able to do what I do if it wasn't for all of you. So thank you so very much, and especially all of you who are watching, listening, sharing, supporting, all of it. So we are back. Well, I am back. Fresh back from the 2023 Ohio mini conference. And I'm hopping in here really quick because this is going to be an Imagine Listening session. I was actually just there these past couple days. It's September 8th right now, Friday. And I was out there Tuesday evening through yesterday. And I was there for an 8-hour class that I did called Keep Broadcasting Your Message, and had an excellent time. Did an Imagine Listening session there, so I recorded both of those parts, which is Imagine Listening as well as open mic. So this first one here for episode 510 is going to be Imagine Listening. I hope you enjoy it. Again, had an excellent time. Thank you very much to the Ohio mini conference for bringing me in to do this 8-hour session with everyone, and to all the attendees, thank you so much for being there in support of each other, for sharing stories, for engaging, throwing out ideas, just all of it. Thank you so very much. So without further ado, here is Imagine Listening, and this is Within the Trenches, episode 510.
Imagine watching your son take off on his four-wheeler. You witnessed this many times. He rides, he has fun, and all is well. Now imagine your 911 taking a call from frantic parents who have just found their son underneath his flipped four-wheeler. You listen to the parents scream while removing it off his body. You tell them that help is on the way, and you give them CPR instructions. An officer arrives, and you listen as he performs CPR. "Come on, buddy, come on," is what you hear over the phone. This is what it's like within the trenches of 911. In this episode, you will hear stories from the I Am 911 movement, a movement I started to fight the reclassification of dispatchers from clerical to protective and bring awareness to the types of calls that 911 dispatchers answer on a daily basis. This is an Imagine Listening session, and we are here together at the 2023 Ohio Mini Conference. Now, you have to learn at the beginning, but I must warn you again and add that if you suffer from PTSD or have suicidal tendencies, you are listening at your own risk. The stories you're about to hear are all true and come from the dispatchers who live them. As some stories have a good outcome, the majority are horrifying. This is our reality. Your worst day is our everyday. So let's start with a bang. I want you to imagine each story. Become the dispatcher who has taken each call, and imagine listening. So that intro there was one of my calls. It was that first call that I shared for the movement. And listening to that, "Come on, buddy, come on," it was actually a trigger for me. A few days after I posted it, because during that time in 2016, a show called Stranger Things on Netflix had just come out, and I was binge watching it. And there's an episode, spoiler alert, it's been a long time, but there was an episode in there where the show finds one of the kids that was missing throughout the entire show, and he's doing CPR instructions, and he's saying something similar. "Come on, buddy, come on, stay with me." And I remember I started sobbing watching that. And I didn't know why right away. And then I realized it's because I was watching what I heard play out right in front of me. It was a trigger. But I share it. This is part of my story. It's okay to share. Does anyone have a story they would like to share, whether out loud or one that they've written down?
I guess since I have the mic, I'll go ahead and start. I come from a non-traditional PSAP. We have 4,200 cameras in our jurisdiction, which is only 2 miles by 2 miles. I'm already shaking, sorry. The call I took was from a caller who was standing on the ledge of our 7-story garage. Because we have so many cameras, we were able to find him standing on the ledge. So not only was I trying to talk to him, trying to find that hook, to get him to wait just a little bit longer, I was watching him too. And so every time I watched him waver, it felt like I was failing just a little bit. So I tried, and I kept him busy, and I distracted him as long as possible. And finally, I saw him step backward off the ledge, just in time to see one of my officers tackle him. We got him to the hospital. I talked to his parents. And it was the first time I heard "thank you." If he had jumped, that would have been the 7th suicide I had watched happen that year. And it's still, I saw it in my nightmares. I saw it in my dreams for weeks afterwards. I would see body imprints landing beside me as I walked through campus. And it took forever to get over that one.
I took a 911 call from a gentleman who was teaching his 16-year-old son to drive. And the 16-year-old had overturned his car, and the father was trapped between his son and the roof of the car, and I heard the son die. And it was heart-wrenching to try and reassure him that help was on his way. And I was only 19 at the time.
Thank you for sharing that story.
So it was a late in the evening shift, and 3 high school girls attended a high school party that involved alcohol and drugs. Those 3 girls left together, and they were all under the influence of something, alcohol and maybe possibly whatever else they would add. They flipped over their car and it was a flooding time, and a creek, which is usually doesn't have that much, was pretty full and overran the banks. The driver somehow lost control. The car flipped into the creek, and I listened to the youngest girl drown in the back seat, and I listened to the 2 girls in front screaming for help because they could not get out of their seatbelts. And the passenger was going underwater too because the car was moving in a way that it was now coming up to the front of the car. Passenger was saved when rescuers got there. I feel not only for listening to that, but I feel for those girls as they watched their friend die. And the mothering instincts came in, and I feel like I should have done more in that very helpless situation of pure chaotic screaming and trying to get them there quick enough to release their seatbelts so they could get out.
28 years ago, 3 months into the job, I took your 911 call as you told me, in a detached, vacant voice, that your 3-month-old was not breathing. I took your 911 call as your wife wailed in the background. I took your 911 call as you told me your baby was cold. I took your 911 call as your wife screamed in horror and shock. I took your 911 call as you told me your baby was blue and stiff. I took your 911 call as your wife went silent. I took your 911 call as I told you to hold your family one last time until first responders could arrive. I am 911. I took a call from a guy who was very calm when he started to cry and dropped the sentence, "I think my wife is dead." I offered him CPR, to which he declined. He told me that he was expected, but not this soon. She had cancer. He just got her home from hospice. Everyone was on the way, and he wanted to hang up. I asked him to mute the line and keep it open, just in case he needed me. I was there. He did. And I sat in silence and cried as I listened to him cry. Not only because her death was so similar to my father's passing, but the fact that I felt 1,000% helpless. I couldn't do more. I couldn't help how I wish. I couldn't stop his pain. I just want to help. I am 911.
It would be 5 years ago now. I took a call. It was at the very edge of our jurisdiction when I was in a very small department for a mother who was telling me that her 3-year-old child wasn't breathing. So even though it was in our department, we sent officers out there. It was already too late. The child had been dead for hours. One of the most disturbing parts of this call was that the mother was just very sort of apathetic about what was going on. My officer went and performed CPR on the child's lifeless body. We later found out that this child had been abused so severely that he had internally bled out over days, probably stemming from the date of his 3rd birthday. My daughter was 9 months old at the time, so I struggled with it for months, and I cried myself to sleep many nights, and we ended up making a little Build-A-Bear that we still have to this day. And every night when I put my daughter to bed, I give it a little squeeze with her and just keeping him alive. And even if nobody else in his life loved him, that we loved him even if he was gone.
Thank you. See, this is good. It might not feel like it right away, but this is good.
This isn't my story, but I'm the 911 coordinator, so this happened to one of my dispatchers just 2 months ago. She received a call in mid-afternoon. Gentleman opened the conversation up with, "I want to report a murder and a suicide." And he commenced to tell her that he had killed his dad and set his house on fire, and he was at a different residence, and he had set it on fire also. She talks to him. She carries on a conversation that lasts about 5 minutes, and he said, "I don't have anything to live for. And I'm going to die in this house." she convinced him, she talks to him, she convinced him that he did have things to live for, and he finally tells her that, okay, I will get out of the house for you because you want me to. Through the conversation, you can hear him coughing, so forth and so on, and finally he just, you hear nothing except breathing and so forth, and then you hear nothing. We later found out that they found that gentleman right inside the front door of his house. He had passed away also. And I assured her that she done everything that she could. She was doing the right thing because he had told her that he would try to get out of the house because of what she'd done. But she still has that she wonders, did she do everything she could? And I believe she did. But that's the things that you guys deal with, and me as a supervisor has to assure you that you are doing a great job and you're doing the right thing.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It's one of the most important things there. Thank you, sir, for that, because just really quick, I had a call once where, in the same sense, I was blaming myself for a lot of things during this call, and it took EMS calling up to let me know that I did everything I could for this infant when I was helping their mom give CPR, that when they got there, they were doing textbook CPR, and there was nothing else that I could do. And that's the closure that I needed to continue. And to have the sergeant come in and say, what do you need to know? And I said, tell me everything. I just need to know without a doubt that I did every single thing that I could. Because it eats at us sometimes, right? We wonder. So good on you for letting her know that. Thank you.
I had a call come in from an older lady who went out to check on her husband who had been out farming. She found him unresponsive in the combine. I felt so helpless because she couldn't get up to get to him, and all I could provide was comfort. Like a prayer answered, one of my relatives up the road showed up for no reason. He wasn't called. Nothing. He started CPR for me. We were alone in that moment. He pushed, and I counted. The world around is silent. Ultimately, we were unsuccessful, and he passed. I wish there was more we could have done, but it was a death. I still think of my caller, and I hope she's okay. I am 911. When I first started, a female called saying her brother committed suicide on FB Live. He was homeless and on drugs. I looked up his profile, and the live was still going. You couldn't see anything but nature. I couldn't hear anything but the wind. We pinged his phone to a park in the city. We sent them out there, and I watched the live while they arrived. He started yelling for help. They found him, and today he looks so healthy. The live ended, and I rewatched to see he had jumped off a cliff, but managed to stay alive. You could hear his phone ringing every time I called it. That was my first suicide attempt, and we were able to find him in time. He was at the bottom with broken bones, and I can still hear his help pleas. I am 911. I was working as a call taker and received a call from a 14-year-old boy who said he was at a party and he took his 10-year-old sister. He said a fight broke out and people started shooting. His sister was shot, bleeding, and not responding. I attempted to give instructions to him how to stop the bleeding and give CPR. After I was able to hang up, I then got a call from the frantic mother who had received a call that someone told her her daughter was shot. When talking to the brother, I felt helplessness, not being able to get help there faster. When talking to the mother, I felt the pain, knowing that her daughter was not going to make it. I am 911.
Does anyone else have a story they would like to share? Does anyone have any stories that were written down? If you have some, please do so. Again, it's okay not to be okay. It's okay to open up and share. So I can tell you one really quick that I had. One night, I get a phone call where I thought I heard two females screaming at the top of their lungs. One for sure, who was the main caller, but the other was in the background. Very high pitch, sounded like a female who was screaming as well. And as you know or may not know, depending on how long you've been doing this job, when someone is screaming, someone is hysterical, and you're trying to get that information from them, you're basically background noise to them. They hear that you're there, but they're still going through their thing. Something that I learned early on, I was taught, was if you bring your voice down to a whisper, it almost as if it tricks the caller, because that background noise isn't there anymore. So then they stop and they ask, "Are you there?" And every time I did this, it worked. So I did this with this lady, and she stopped for a moment, and she asked, "Are you there? Is somebody there? Is somebody there?" And I jumped right in, got all the information I needed to. What happened with this call and why it messed me up at the time. And of course, it still sticks with me, but it's easier because I share it, because I talk about it. This girl and her boyfriend and her boyfriend's brother went to a bar, and they were having some drinks. The boyfriend's brother was upset because of a bad breakup, and he kept saying, "I don't want to live anymore. I don't want to live anymore." They go back home. He's standing outside, and this is in the winter time as well. He's standing outside. His brother comes out. The caller's boyfriend goes outside to confront his brother to see if he's okay. And his brother says, I don't want to live anymore. So, brother goes inside, gets a gun that's loaded, brings it out to his brother who's distraught, gives it to him, and says, "If you're going to do it, go ahead and do it." He did it thinking that his brother was going to realize what a stupid idea this was, or thought. But it didn't go that way. His brother shot himself in the head right in front of him. So the other female that I thought I heard in the background was actually the brother screaming. That's how much pain he was in because of this mistake. And all I could think, because we're empaths, right? And we put ourselves in the caller's shoes to relate, to understand. All I could think about was my brother. What if it was us in this situation? And throughout all the screaming and everything that's going on, I can hear him in the background yelling, "I can't believe he did it. I can't believe he actually did it. I'm going to go kill myself now." And he grabs the gun and runs outside. And I'm trying to get her away from him. The guy runs back inside, drops the gun, and runs back outside. She ends up getting the weapon and puts it away so that he can't find it. I'm trying to keep them separated. This felt like forever of a call, but it was only a few minutes. And one thing I'll never forget is I'm telling her that help is on the way, that EMS is almost there, because I didn't know how bad it was. But I'm telling her this. And she tells her boyfriend, help is on the way. The ambulance is almost here. And he yells out in the background, what the hell are they going to do? My brother's face is all over the snow. Help gets out there. She says, thank you. And I hang up with her. And then it's just me sitting there. And my supervisor, my friend that I was talking about earlier, she looks at me and she says, are you okay? And what do you think my response was? Yeah, I'm okay. I'm fine. But I wasn't fine. I sat there taking other calls. It was a couple hours before the end of the shift. It was 5 a.m. Couldn't wait to get out of there. But there was one thing that I needed to do so I could feel better. And I got in the car and I called my brother. And the phone is just ringing and ringing. Like, come on, man, pick up the damn phone. And then he picks up, half awake, because it's 5 a.m. And he's just, hello? And I said, I love you, man. And like any good sibling, the quick response is, shut the hell up. He's like, what's wrong with that guy? And then I told him everything that happened. And he says, holy shit, I love you too. That's one that'll always stick with me. But I share it because it bothered me for so long. But as soon as I started talking about it and putting it out there, other people started sharing. It's hard for me to describe to people what it is like to be in a room like this with people who know exactly what it is that you go through when you take a call. When you're doing infant CPR, when you're trying to find someone who says that they're going to kill themselves, and then you're unable to get them before they do it. One of those stories that I was on that video about the car going into the tree, that was my call. I tried to get a hold of that person. And I blamed myself. I thought, what if I would have changed my line of questioning? What if I would have said this? What if I would have said this? I went as far as measuring on the map how far the house was, the address to the spot that they ran the car into the tree. Because for that call, I needed to know that I had done everything. Every time I heard, and I don't see him a lot now, but every time I heard a Toyota Tercel, I thought about that call because that is the car that he was driving. When he ran into the tree, I was trying to call him. Phone is ringing and ringing. And then another call comes in, and it was so busy that nobody could answer that other call. So I hang up, answer, and I hear that this person just saw a car go into a tree. And I'm asking for the location. I'm looking. I'm like, damn it, please don't be this person. And it was. And that was the last 2 weeks of my dispatching career. And if dispatch was a gang, it was like I was getting beat out because I took every shit call that you could think of going out of dispatch. But I share because it's okay not to be okay.
So just last week, I was sitting in on an interview of a new dispatcher. It was me, the coordinator, and the sheriff. And at the end, we asked the person being interviewed if they had any questions. So she's like, yeah, what was your worst call? And all of a sudden, I answered it, and I was like, it still bothers me. So I told her my worst call, and I was just trying to keep it together like I am right now. Started out as a 911 call. It was from a guy I knew, and his daughter said that she was going Christmas shopping. It was December 20th, 2021. Well, he had found a suicide note, And this 24-year-old female who's suicidal, she had a past of cutting and stuff like that. So I went over the call. He told me the places she likes to go. I'm sending deputies to where she liked to go. There's a cemetery in one part of her county, and she wasn't there, so we started pinging her phone. And this girl, it was my wife's niece. So I broke the rules of dispatch. I got on my cell phone. I text my wife because they were very close. And I was like, just find out where Paige is and get her on the phone. So she texted me back. I tried to try this unusual. She's not calling me back. So we started pinging phone. We started getting in the area, and it ended up being an adjacent county where she was at. So we contacted them and received a call from the adjacent county that she hung herself. And I had to hear that on the phone, and I told my surgeon, I was like, I got to go home because my wife knows something's going on. So I went home, and she see me come home, and that was unusual. I never leave work. So he kind of knew what happened. But the worst part of that is I couldn't tell anybody because the mom, which is my sister-in-law, she didn't know. So just holding that in for several hours, it just really took effect on me.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
I answered a 911 call from a woman in a trailer that was on fire. She was in the back of the trailer with 4 other people, one of which was a baby. There were 2 other people in the front of the trailer that had already gotten out. The woman on the phone said they couldn't exit through the back door or a window because they were all blocked by furniture and other belongings. We got the fire department and deputies dispatched right away, and also got a township trustee that lived nearby to come with a backhoe to try to make an opening to get the 5 people out. I stayed on the phone with the woman, listening to their screams and cries for help and to save her baby. We were also on the phone with the people who escaped the fire, begging for help for their loved ones. Tragically, they all died in the fire. Those screams haunted me for a long time. I am 911. I had a call from an elderly female who fell and was unable to get up. She stated there was a key under a turtle on the porch. EMS arrived on scene, but was unable to find the key. In the meantime, the line went dead as I was shouting, "Where's the turtle?" As EMS was clearing the scene, they found the key. I am 911. I heard your 10-year-old brother scream as he found your tiny, little lifeless body. I think of you often, sad of your short life. I am 911. I will never forget the sound of you beating on your husband's chest and screaming, "Why did you do this to me?" when you found him dead with a bag over his head. This was my first 911 call. I am 911. September 4th, 2023, 2 days ago. I listened to parents crying over their 4-month-old baby who wasn't breathing. I tried everything I could, but it was already too late. I know I did what I could, but it does hit a little different, as our baby girl will be here next month. I am 911. One of my first nights alone off training, late morning, after Valentine's Day of 2019, I received a call from an older gentleman advising me he had shot himself. He had laid there in bed for 3 to 5 hours before calling. The only reason he called was because he couldn't take the pain any longer, and he didn't want to shoot himself again. I later found out his wife had died recently, and due to Valentine's Day, he decided he did not want to live anymore. He survived. And to my understanding, he got help. But to this day, that call sticks with me. I am 911. One of my first calls off training was a woman that came home to find her son had hung himself. He had hung himself against the door, and she was unable to push it in to get to him. She could see his reflection through the crack in the door in his dresser mirror. The screams of that mother is something I will hear for the rest of my life. I am 911. I got a call of a man threatening people at a hotel in my town. They knew where he was at, and for some reason, I never got a description of him. Parties were separated, and he was not actively threatening anyone. One officer read the complaint on his MDT and dispatched himself. He arrived on scene before I was even off the phone. Upon arrival, he realized it was a suspect in an armed robbery we had earlier in the day and was believed to still be armed. The officer had him at gunpoint until another unit arrived. The man decided to fight officers and grab for their guns. He headbutted the first officer and had him pinned to the wall. They got him into custody when more officers arrived to help, but not before tasing him multiple times. The officer ended up hurt, and I thought it was my fault for not getting a description, as we could have identified the man. The officer has healed and is back to work. He told me he has never come so close to shooting someone. Every time him or another officer on the same shift goes to that business, I panic. I am 911. I am a relatively new dispatcher, only 1 year on. I came into work at 11 a.m. one Saturday. The dispatchers in the room had taken a 911 open line from an Apple Watch. They could hear moaning as if someone was in pain. As a new dispatcher, I watched them work tirelessly to find out what had happened, even after the police and firemen combed the area. They didn't find anything. Based on their gut feeling, they did not give up. They found 2 girls flipped into a ditch off of the highway, hidden from view. They only found them because our dispatchers did not give up. One girl survived the accident, and her name was actually the same as one of the dispatcher's daughters working to find her. This set an example for me as a new dispatcher and gives me chills to talk about it with them. I truly believe we would have lost both girls if they did give up. The car was completely hidden from view. They called for a drone from a neighboring agency and found the car. I am 911.
I had just gotten out of a good friend from high school's calling hours for committing suicide and had to immediately go into work that night. I couldn't get the time off for the funeral and everything. And this had been a 3 month of suicides in my personal life and my family's life. And the first call I took was a suicidal female that had drank bleach and was sitting in a parking lot and wouldn't tell me where and wouldn't tell me anything. And finally, we were able to get enough information, and it was on the complete other side of a township, and the dispatcher was busy, and it wasn't getting dispatched fast or urgently by any means. And for 11 minutes, I sat on the phone with this woman, doing all of the suicidal tips and tricks of what can I talk to you about. And it was, well, how's your kids? Well, my kids hate me. How's your pet? Oh, my pet died. It was just, if I could have found anything in this woman's life that was positive, it wasn't there. And finally, she went silent on the phone with me, and I stayed on and could hear the officers finally get there and find her car. And luckily, the EMS had arrived on time too, that they were able to get her to the hospital and pump her stomach, and get I don't know how much amounts of bleach that she had drank, whether it was enough to kill her or just knock her unconscious, I don't know, but get her to the hospital safely. And I went to stand up and say, I need a minute, I need to go take a break. And the supervisor I had at the time looked at me and said, no, you need to sit back down, and there's another call coming in, and wouldn't allow me to get up. And there went the rest of the shift, call after call. So
Thank you for sharing that. A lot has changed. Before we get to this next part here, I just want to say this really quick. A lot has changed from the time that I started in 2001 with no real resources, no peer support. From about 2016 on, things have changed. It's a new day. We're sharing our stories, and people are understanding. And there are way more resources out there. Because what we're doing here is, in a way, healing and a form of closure through storytelling. So thank you, all of you, for being here, for what you do, and for sharing. A round of applause for those who shared, please.
And there you have it. And thank you again to everyone who is there for sharing stories, as well as for all of the stories that were submitted in. So there's two ways to do stories for Imagine Listening. That's either to say it out loud on the mic, or you write it down. And I've got a handful of stories here that I recorded. I read these stories, and they were in the episode that you just listened to. So thank you, all of you who shared stories, whether you said it out loud or you wrote it down. And if you didn't share a story, it's okay, because one of the best parts is that you're there in support of everyone else. And what we're doing for Imagine Listening is healing and finding some form of closure through the power of storytelling. So thank you all very much. Thank you for what you do every single day for this profession. And again, to the Ohio Mini Conference, thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you for bringing me in. I was honored to be able to do it, to do this 8-hour class. And I'm excited to come back, teach some more, or to bring this class on the road and have it out there. So thank you all once again. For those who are watching and listening, if you have any comments, questions, or you ever want to be a guest on this show, you can email us, and that is going to be wttpodcast@gmail.com. Once again, that is wttpodcast@gmail.com. And you can follow us all over social media, and you can also become a patron of the podcast or a Facebook subscriber. And you can easily find us on links.co/WTT podcast. And that's links with 2 i's.co/WTT podcast. Thank you all very, very much. You can see this on Facebook, YouTube, as well as Twitter and LinkedIn. And then you can listen 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone, and we'll see you in the next one.